Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube video, Day in the Life of a Product Manager. My name is Darius Kumari and I've been a tech software product manager for around the last 7 years at a large enterprise organization. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you a presentation that myself and a colleague of mine routinely give new joiners and interns looking to learn more about the product manager role, specifically what type of tasks and activities go into product management and ultimately launching and managing a product out in the market. And so as I begin, let's start with some quick introductions. So my name is Darius Kumari. I'm a computer science undergrad. I've also completed my MBA. I work currently as a product manager at a technical organization. And I also have written my own book. So for those of you who are looking just to get some advice in your career, new grads looking to break into the workforce, then Tips for New Grads to Succeed in the Workforce is my book, available on Amazon. Link is in the description below. I'm also generally joined, not today though, by Manjeet Singh. He's been identified actually by the government of India as a fitness influencer. He has a TikTok for his agile fitness brand, and he also has released a book talking about the importance of fitness and wellness for the modern human being. And so as we go through today's presentation, while I'll focus on purely product management principles, we'll definitely end with an important note on keeping yourself healthy and how that's going to help drive success in the workplace. Now, with that, let's dive right into it. I frequently get asked by friends, by, new grads trying to break into the industry, what does a product manager do on a day-to-day basis? How do they launch products and features? And so the first thing, if I was joking, I tell people is product management, you're in meetings all day long, right? You wish you could get work done, but ultimately you're just managing stakeholders. You're the central hub with all these spokes across the organization, internally and externally with customers. And so a lot of meetings happening, and it's a very busy role. Definitely there's not as much independence or free time with this role on a day-to-day basis because of how, I would say, central you are to a lot of the activities, the execution, the delivery, and the strategy that goes on with your product. And so let's get a bit more tangible though. If I had to summarize and give you the TLDR version of what a product manager does, what I see myself doing, what I've learned, and seen others do in a similar role in other tech companies here in this modern day, is a product manager is very much like your captain of the ship. And I say that in the sense that you're really there to steer and guide the organization and its resources towards what you deem a valuable outcome that's going to make the business money, that's going to provide value to that end customer, serving some kind of a need, solving some kind of a problem, accomplishing some kind of a use case. And so a great example is from Pirates of the Caribbean. You have this notion of Johnny Depp, and he's got this, this compass, right? He looks at the compass, and that tells you where to go. And in many cases, that's what a product manager does, is they serve as that compass for the organization. You have resources across engineering, design, UX, all looking towards product management and saying, hey, where's the compass headed? Where should we invest in next? What should we be focusing our time and effort on? And so that's at a high level what I see the role as. And if I had to distill it to a single sentence, it would be leading and empowering valuable decisions and ideas. So that really is what product management is all about, is that there's a lot of decisions happening at the macro level. What type of product should you build? What type of market do you want to be in? What's the pricing going to be? But also at a more micro level, what type of features do you want? What should the button do when it's clicked? Lower level tactical decisions on execution and getting your product out to market. And so not only do you want to lead and set the vision for where the ship is headed, but it's important to make that distinction on it's empowering these valuable decisions and ideas, right? Because as a product manager, you're just one resource surrounded by so many individuals, and you want to really harness that collective groupthink and collective mind and empower the group to make the right decisions that are in line with your vision and in line with where you think the business needs to move to serve its own purpose. The last thing I'll say there's ideas. I joke as being the idea guy at work. As a product manager, you're generally also quite entrepreneurial, and you're always thinking of new features, new ideas, new products, new markets you could enter, extensions to an existing product line, emerging technology that you want to take advantage of. And so you definitely have a lot of ideas so that there's never idle capacity in your organization. You're always having, whether it's in a tech company, you have, developers programming, whether it's writing, code on valuable features, or designers designing, or researchers asking questions about new areas you want to get into, so that you really have the distilled and best vision, so that ultimately, as we could see here with the good old coffin meme, you don't want your business and your product to see an end of life. You don't want to see layoffs. You want to make your business as successful as it can, because that translates into having made customers as successful as they can. And that's really, at the end of the day, what it's about: building impactful products to improve the lives, solve problems, and provide value to society for others. All right, cliff notes aside, let's look at the more broad landscape of what product management looks like in the experiences that I've had, that I've talked to some other product managers about. This is in no way representative of every organization. A lot of organizations change the scope, either being more wide or more narrow on what product management does. But here's a general sense of, from what I've seen in the industry and in my own role, what the 10 core activities are of a product manager. And I'm actually going to guide you through these using a real world example of a product that I brought to the market, 0 to 1, just from an idea to actually being implemented in the real world and providing customer value. And so throughout that journey, the 10 steps that I took started with 1, ideation, thinking about the product I want to build. 2, doing product proposal and getting internal stakeholder buy-in around this product that I'm trying to bring to market. 3, then once I have the sign off to invest, doing that initial requirements gathering and research with early adopter, design partner customers. Then codifying everything I've learned in the vision into actual epics and stories that can be picked up and discussed with engineering. But before anyone even works on it, you then get into release planning, right? You have this vision, everything you want to build, but there's a finite set of resources, a finite set of time. And so release planning actually involves saying, okay, what's the prioritization? What do we need by when? What's the MVP for getting out to market with something? And so we plan out when we think we can launch, and then we get into that, fine-tuned machine with engineering, with design, with documentation, QE, in terms of working the stories through till completion, going through it in an agile fashion, testing the stories, going through sprint reviews, and then ultimately landing on that point of a finished product that you can then enable internal teams about, so they're aware, hey, there's this new thing we need to support, new thing we need to market, new thing we need to sell, but also enabling external, right? Maybe your partners, your customers, you want to make them aware of this new offering. And once it's out in market, that's when the work really starts, right? You've shipped it, and now you need to upkeep it. You need to fix the bugs. You need to listen to customers and prioritize roadmap. And you need to identify the best opportunities for keeping your product competitive in the market. So with that, let's start with our first step here in product management, which is ideation. So in the ideation step, and this works whether you're, in this case, launching a new product 0 to 1, or you have an existing product that's already been out in the market and you're just trying to think, what else could this do? What else could I add that would help me add, a higher price or land an additional percentage of a target market, a higher user acquisition, because ultimately you want to drive revenue for your organization. And so in my case, I worked in a industry of service management, and so you deal with this notion of ticketing and repetitive issues. And so I was tasked with identifying what are some things we can do to solve repetitive issues. And so when you ideate, you could use a mind map like this, but you could also look towards what are industry trends that are coming up, what are competitors doing, what are big customers asking for, what's in the roadmap, in the backlog. And ultimately, you want to identify where you think the best opportunity is. So in my case, I started, noting down what types of issues happen in the real world. When you work for a company, you want to report issues maybe through a portal, through a chat interface, you want to send an email to someone, or maybe you just want to, in the IT world, you want to just walk up to someone in IT. And the issue though with that is very unstructured. And so there's a great opportunity there that I identified, which is, hey, we could create some software and add some process and structure to this unstructured walk up that happens in service management. It happens with IT and organizations. And so that first step of product management is just ideating through and thinking, what is that problem I want to solve? In this case, repetitive issues. What is that differentiation, whether doing something new, in my case, building that in-person experience that no one has seen before from a ticketing perspective. And so let's zoom in on that. And as we do so, we can identify what type of features we may need. We say, okay, I've seen other consumer grade examples in my own life. I've seen queues. I've seen, Apple Genius Bar. Maybe there's some things I can do around displaying information, letting you check in online, displaying your spot in the queue, displaying what your estimated wait time is going to be, and really managing that not only from a customer or user perspective, but also from the provider, which is the agent providing the service. And so I have my idea in place, this walk-up experience, let's call it. Now it's going to be to the next step, which is getting the buy-in from the leadership to say, yes, this is something we want to invest resources into. So step 2, generating and pitching product and feature proposals. As mentioned, product management is very much around setting the vision and selling your ideas on what you think the organization needs to invest in. And so if you've seen the show Silicon Valley, this notion and character that Jared plays is very much aligned to some of the things that someone on the business side, like a product manager, does. And so with this new idea that I had is, hey, let's do a walk-up experience. The first thing that you do as a product manager is you also look at, okay, what's in the market today, right? Like, what's my customer already doing? Are there alternatives that they're doing maybe manually, less efficiently? Are there competitors offering products on the market? Are partners offering a solution, maybe a custom build out of an existing solution? And you want to identify ultimately, does this proposal align to your larger company's business strategy and the needs of your customers, right? Because you wouldn't do something completely out of West field that is not aligned to your brand and is off base from where your core competencies lie. And so you want to then get internal stakeholder and leadership buy-in to invest resources into the idea, right? And while you see here on the screen a SWOT analysis, I think that's more of a traditional, less used approach. You would probably do something more along the lines of a more thorough analysis at what's the market looking like, what is the opportunity, the upside, how could revenue recognition look like, and so on. And so with that justification going upstream and you're pitching it and you get the sign off that yes, you can invest that feature in your roadmap or you can invest in building out that new product, that's what will give you the resources you need, whether it's a design, engineers, to then build this new capability. And so, you have that sign off. What's the first thing you do? The first thing you do now that you've sold the idea internally and gotten that sign off is you get customer and user research. Because at the end of the day, youth may think you're building the greatest thing on the planet, but your perspective does not represent the perspective of your users, your customers, i.e. the people actually buying and living and breathing your solution from a 9 to 5. And so generally from a product side, you always love talking to or hearing feedback from, just one more customer, because it helps clarify what that larger problem space looks like, and you can start identifying trends, right? Because if you over-index on one customer, you're going to build a tool that's too narrow. And so because you're a product manager and you're serving a larger market need, you want to talk to multiple customers, get that broader sense of what the problem is and what people need for solutions. And so a research organization and a design organization or your partners in product management, they can help validate either through qualitative or quantitative studies, early designs, and help identify the biggest questions you have, helping you get answers. And sales also, if you're in an existing organization that has customers, your sales team might know already customers that are sharing the problem you're trying to solve. And so getting that early set of customers and turning them into what we call design partners or points of contact, that as you make iterative steps of development towards bringing your product to market, it can help act as a soundboard and getting continual feedback on, week 1, how do we look? Or sprint 1, how do we look? Sprint 2, how do we look? Sprint 3, how do we look? Any changes in your needs and requirements, so you're getting that continual feedback. And so here I was on site, as mentioned, with a customer who implemented something homegrown, and you'll find that commonly in the software space is before you buy a solution, the customer may already have something that they coded in-house, or that's a little bit more manual. And so you're using these data points to ultimately get clarity on the vision. Now, once we have that clarity on the vision and we have that idea of what we want our product and our feature to do, then in product management, the kind of tactical deliverable that we have is writing these epics and user stories. And now, in some organizations, they have an additional kind of product owner role under a product manager or business analyst that actually does this minute writing based on the details you provide them. But from my experiences, product managers have also taken on that mantle, and they write what we're calling user stories and epics, which are just ways to track and really get into writing the larger solution set of what you're hoping to accomplish, the problems you're trying to solve, and who you're doing this for. And so the classic language that you'll find in a user story is, as a user X, you're describing the who this is for. I need feature Y, you're kind of describing what you need the engineering team to build so that I can accomplish Z, which is the why, the justification. Why do I need a button that lets me reset the screen? Why do I need an undo option? Why do I need a way to automatically schedule a recurring event instead of just manually doing it once, right? And so you can add additional details later on. Keep in mind, right now in the life cycle, we've ideated, we've done initial customer research, and now we're speccing out that initial project and product scope. But we don't bring in necessarily all the team members yet and talk through every story in minute detail. That'll happen later when we get into the sprints, which I'll talk about with the engineering team. And so you can add those additional details later on in what we call story refinement. And they should really be focused on the outcomes of the product, talking through permutations, talking through what are all the edge cases you should consider, what should the behavior be, for no data, some data, a ton of data. So really describe everything as clearly as you can, but don't give a technical implementation, right? As generally in product management, you don't say, I want you to use this Python library, right? You don't say, I want you to use this CSS class. Try to stay away from the technical decisions on implementation. Lead the engineering managers and leads make those decisions. You're really just describing the business problem that you want the team to take on and help solve with engineering. And something I'm going to actually do is give everyone a quick example of how important the story writing exercise is from product management. And so crisp, specific, and exact, what we call acceptance criteria, or the details around that, that story or feature that you want the team to accomplish, is really important to saving the company money and ensuring your team has the same shared vision on the outcomes, right? As a product manager, your vision setting on where you need that ship to steer and move and what we're looking to accomplish to solve user problems. And so if I just wrote the requirements, and you could think about this in your head on what you would do, how you would visualize this. If I just said, go ahead and draw a square, right? This is my requirements I'm giving you. And then I said, draw a circle. I said, draw a triangle. And then go ahead and write your name at the bottom, right? You have an idea of how you would have implemented this, right? In your mind, you're drawing this, you have a sketch. Now, the reality is this happens with product all the time. You write something as a product manager, you have an idea in your head. Then you get to that sprint review later on, which we'll touch on, and you look at it and you say, man, I missed the mark. That was not what I had in my mind, right? Because really I was thinking, I wanted to draw a square the size of my hand. And then I wanted to draw a circle within the square. And then I wanted to draw a triangle whose points touch the circle and write the text, your name, in the lower right, right? And so we could see at a high level, it's the same requirement. But when you get to the actual tangible outcome that you as a product manager were after because you heard customers wanting this, then it's extremely important to be as explicit as you can. Make sure that there's really no ambiguity, no room for interpretation, so that story could be picked up by anyone and they understand exactly what should be implemented to provide value to the customer and to solve a problem. And so with all those stories in place, those epics in place, we are now at the step of planning the scope of the release with the dev and design managers, right? So keep in mind, as a product manager, you yourself aren't writing code necessarily in many organizations. Maybe you're doing some, basic mock-ups, but you're not creating end-to-end designs. Depending on how large your organization is, that's generally in part of a design part of the organization. And so what you're now doing is you're vocalizing to these other functions you're dependent on, design and engineering, what is that body of work looking like that's coming up, right? What are we as a team going to move towards solving? And so here I am talking to my dev manager about, we need to build this walk-up experience. Let's try to get it out in the next release. Depending on how fast your organization releases, you generally plan anywhere from 2 to 4, maybe even 6 months if you're releasing slower. And you're planning, what are your must and nice haves, right? Like, what do I need in that V1 of the product to ship and provide value versus what is a little bell and whistle extra that might add differentiation. And what I found is, in my career, always my desired scope, what I want to accomplish for customers and what I want the product to do, will always be greater than the actual scope of what my engineering team or design team can deliver in that given period of time, right? You have levers, right? You could add more resources, add more time, decrease the feature scope. But generally, the realistic one is decreasing feature scope. And so the dev manager will reduce that scope and say, hey, here's my actual team's capacity. While on my end, I'm saying, if we just had that extra feature, I just know how much more value we can be providing customers. And so say I want 30 things, I might get 10 by the time we launch. And of that 10, maybe 5 will be stretch nice to haves that we think we can get in. And then 15 of them are just not in the realm of possibility. We don't even want to stress the team out, right? Because we don't want to overload the team. I, as a product manager, am serving my internal teams, like my engineers, just as much as I'm serving the customer, right? I want them to have a healthy workload, get meaning out of the work, but they shouldn't be stretched beyond the limit just to get more features in. And so prioritization here is key, right? If I have 30 things I need the product to do, I need to be clear on what the priority is for those 30 items. And a common framework used is something referred to as weighted shortest job first. You try to get your biggest bang for the buck, to put it simply, on that feature. And so with that, we have the planning that happened, at a high level of that next 2 to 4 months of, hey, this is what we're going to deliver as a team. And so the next step is going to be actually, getting into the minds, as they say, and starting to build this walk-up experience. So to get the work done and implemented, it's very common for organizations to use an agile methodology, which is a set of process in terms of how you go about doing work that allows you to quickly change your plan if you need to, get in feedback and make iterations. And so we use this notion of sprints, which is 2-week bodies of work, where we plan out 2 weeks at a time, based on that larger initial PI plan or program increment plan, which is safe terminology that I was referring to. And this is where you get very clear then with the team. You have a exercise called story refinement, in which you go through with your entire or subset of your engineering team. You go through the stories that you have slotted for that upcoming sprint, or if you've already, refined those, you go look into your backlog and you make sure there's no ambiguity in each story. So you're discussing as a team, well, what should it do if this happens or that happens? You want to make sure everyone is clear on the requirements, right? And so even after a developer gets into a sprint, and we have sprint planning, and that's where for the 2 weeks, you plan who's going to work on what that body of work looks like, and we have a plan for the sprint. And then, we're working during that time hand in hand as product with our designers, which could be interaction design, visual design, content design, getting the specs needed for those developers updated if needed. Ideally, the specs were attached to the stories before we even went into the sprint. We're going in and we're ensuring to do agile ceremonies like the refinement planning, and later we'll talk about retrospective. It happens after review. But ultimately, you find it's very collaborative. As a product manager, you're there for your engineering organization. As they're going through those 2 weeks building, they're going to run into questions that might happen. They're going to run into permutations or edge cases, and they're not really sure what they should do. And they'll look to you for that guidance. And that's something where, if every minute detail falls on product, you might find yourself with decision fatigue. And that's where I always advise that empowering the team and setting that strategic vision up front with your entire engineering team and empowering them to make some of these more minor tactical and micro decisions themselves will really save you from decision fatigue, but also it'll give them more ownership around the product that's being built. And so these 2-week sprints are happening. The dev is writing the code. Towards the end of these sprints, it moves into the actual testing. And so QE is going to look at that story that the developer just worked on, and you might get feedback from QE, again, clarifying expected behavior. What should this product have done? Hey, if there's no one in the queue, how should it show up? If there's 10 people in the queue, what should it do? Should it scroll? Should it paginate? You might need to work in with design to get the answers to these questions for these users. And so it's really important, as mentioned, to be that point of contact and that sounding board, but also to empower the team on what the vision is to make a lot of these decisions themselves. At this point, you're also making sure that if there's docs that need to be written, the docs are getting written. You're providing feedback on the docs to the writer to make sure it aligns to the product goals. And then once everything has been built and you're at the end of the 2 weeks, we have what's called sprint review and retrospectives. And so the sprint review is, like show and tell. All the engineers are doing their demos, and it's a great opportunity as a product manager to provide additional feedback. Sometimes you do see changes once it's actually built that are needed, and you can capture those, for future stories. Or if you see issues, you can capture those as defects for the future. And so once everything looks good as a product manager, then it's called accepting the story, right? You're saying, this is just what we needed. This will provide value to the customer. I'm accepting it. I'm signing it off saying we're looking good to ship. And so at the end of all that, you might run into a process called retrospectives, which happens, after that 2-week sprint, after the review. You then look back and say, what went well these 2 weeks? Maybe we say all the designs were really nice and we had all the specs we needed. What didn't go well? Maybe your build server crashed. You couldn't do any check-ins, or, who knows what happened. Someone got sick on the team. And so you do retrospectives around what went wrong, how can we improve it in the future, so that we're continually oiling the machine and becoming better as a delivery organization at delivering product. Now, with that, we should have a product that over time is built. Let's say 2-4 months go by. You had a number of these iterative sprints, which you planned, you refined, you demoed, and you look back with a retrospective, and you have that product. So in my case, my world of the walk-up, what you're seeing on screen now is actually some of the UI that we built with the team, right? We have a queue display. We have a tablet display where you could tap a sentiment survey. We have a tablet check-in display. Not seen as also an online check-in on mobile or on desktop. So you could be at your desk and check in to this walk-up experience. But fundamentally, you now have a built product that is getting ready to be shipped. And so what needs to happen now, you need to evangelize this with the internal community, right? That means your support team needs a technical deep dive and transfer of information on what is this new product, how does it work, what could a customer reasonably configure, so that they know what kind of issues are going to come through to the support line. Your pre-sales team needs to know what's news that I can sell to demo to my customers. When I'm on customer site and I hear an issue, I need to know that there's a solution that we've created that's available to them. Post-sales, again, professional services, customer might call them and say, I need help, I need best practices on implementing this product. And so you need to give that guidance to the post-sale teams on best practice. You have a marketing team. They need to be made aware of this. So if they want to use it on conferences, on webinars, they can be made aware that's available and that there's assets there, maybe a demo, maybe screenshots, etc. And so really everyone in the company is now becoming aware and enabled. You're that spokesperson for the product as a product manager, and you're enabling everyone that this exists. And what you're also doing is these internal formal functions need to be squared away, meaning pricing. You need to have a perspective on how should this be priced by user, by a utility metric such as queue check-in. Are you doing it as a flat cost? Are there buckets and tiers? You need to look at your existing portfolio and your packaging and advise where should it sit, the base tier, the advanced tier. You also need to go through legal, right? This thing needs to be named. The product needs a name that needs approval through legal. You need to make sure if you have any integrations, you use any third parties, you are all squared away from a legal perspective, and that might even happen earlier in the process. And finally, usage analytics, right? As a product manager, once your product gets in the hands of customers, it's all about the data and data-driven decision making. And so you want to make sure before you ship and you get in their hands, it's fully tooled for usage analytics. And so you know what's used, what's not used, where's the drop-off point, and you can help refine your product in the future. With your product evangelized on the internal community and everyone enabled, you now move to evangelizing an external community, right? And so keep in mind, you are your product's number one evangelist and spokesperson. If there's anyone that believes in the product vision and utility, it should be you as the product manager. And so you might be doing at scale marketing webinars, conferences, executive briefings you're getting looped into, customers, of course, important customer calls. Your sales team might be looping you in. They want to show off the roadmap and so on. And so you will have a lot of demos, right? Everyone's curious about this new product and feature, and they want to hear right from the source, how should it be used? And so I will tell you, scaling as a product manager is very hard with your time. And so creating reusable assets like recorded demos, like written blogs that document the best practices, that document the use cases, that document the problems you are looking to solve, really help you scale and enforce thought leadership. And so one of the things I find with product as well is people ask, what kind of skills are needed? And I do see it as very much of a soft skill role, right? In that you are this hub, as I mentioned, you're interfacing with so many resources externally and internally, and you need to almost be a consultant. You're listening to their needs, you're empathizing greatly, you're translating pain points and stories into your backlog. And then you need to get out there and vocalize, right? You do need to have a level of public speaking, whether it's large scale conferences or it's, smaller scale local user events where you can be out there and evangelizing your product. And so again, I'm talking about a lot for what product management does from my own experience. In other organizations, it's more narrow. You might only be back office. There might be a split between an inbound and outbound product manager, so back office and front office with these customer events. But I'm giving you, a high level idea of what I've seen that can reasonably fall on the plate of a product management resource at an organization. And so, this walk-up experience, we had the idea, we pitched it, we built it, and now we're at customer events actually evangelizing it, trying to get adoption, right? Drive usage so that we can ultimately get success stories, because that's what it's all about. It's about the impact of our application. And so something that you'll notice then is here we are after we've shipped, and some of these quotes that I'm going to read is, many thanks. I got great feedback from the customer. Awesome feedback. Session on the walk-up experience was home run. Thank you for your time. Great functionality from the team. And most importantly, we had COVID recently. This specific walk-up experience an organization used to actually process over 800,000 COVID-related appointments using the software that we built, right? And at the end of the day, that is what product management is about, right? It's seeing production usage and positive impact into society and the world of your product and the features that you helped evangelize with the team. You want to deliver impact and value. And what you also want to do is you want to take that customer feedback, whether it's a production win, like the few I read, or if it's a pain point, someone saying, well, I can't configure this for XYZ reason, or this looks like a bug, with your larger delivery team. You are that touch point between the delivery organization and external customers. And so you need to be a great listener, empathize with that feedback, consult and identify the pain points that turn into your roadmap, but then ultimately give that feedback back to your engineering team, because you want to bring them close to the customers, close to the vision, so that everyone is aligned on delivery and really the purpose. That why are you spending all this time building something, writing code, writing stories? It's not to make a product manager happy. It's to deliver some kind of a real world impact into the world. And so with the product now out in the market and out in the world, it's time for upkeep. And this is where there's a lot of, time that's going to be spent, right? You're no longer in kind of the vacuum of design partner, lower usage and just internal development. You're out in the market and you're responding to feedback, right? And that's why it's important to get out in the market fast. You want to make sure you're building the right thing. And markets needs change, right? You want to make sure you're responding quickly. And so on this upkeep note, your product's in the market, you're going to have to work with professional services on best practices and implementation. Customers are going to be reaching out for best practices and clarifying if the product's not working, if there's a defect, or if there's an enhancement you need to track. You're going to get support escalations. Your support team might loop you in for critical P1s, try to figure out, is there a workaround? What's our timing on when we can get a fix in? And in triaging between those organizations of support and engineering and prioritizing accordingly. And you're managing that backlog. That's the most important thing, I think, for product, is that roadmap, right? You pitch that initial idea, that 30 requirements, but you're maintaining and constantly changing that over time. You're adding new requirements, you're deprioritizing requirements, you're managing that backlog and really that vision 1 to 3 years of where's this product going to go, where's the portfolio going to go. And you're utilizing the usage analytics once it's out there in the market to decide what features are heavily used, could use more investment, what features are not used at all, where are the customers dropping off, where do I need to add discoverability for growth and for adoption. And so when it's out in the market, there's a lot more tasks. But the nature of the work, again, is a lot of meetings, a lot of consulting, a lot of empathy for customers, a lot of almost project management in some sense, managing multiple resources and timelines and these stakeholder management externally and internally to make sure we're delivering a value-adding product. And just like that, we have talked through, the life cycle of a product, a real world example here, going all the way from ideation, thinking about how do I solve repetitive issues and identifying that, hey, this contact type for repetitive issues, a walk-up, is underserved. I could create a utility here, a product that adds customer value. You then go into product proposal where you write pitches internally. You're trying to get stakeholders internally to say, you know what, that's a good idea. We have differentiation. We have an unmet market need. We have competencies we can use. We have a right to play. And so you get sign off on that product proposal and the analysis you do on your roadmap. And then you move into requirements gathering, right? You use user research. You get that early customer feedback. You solidify then your roadmap from a story and epic perspective. You get writing all that down and getting your vision in paper. And then you plan that body of work with engineering and design leaders. Once everything is planned and the vision is set, you move into that 2-week sprint cadence where you're working with the developers to refine and plan what the work they're going to do. You clarify anything that's needed for design, for development, for documentation, and then ultimately you work with QE and you work with all the engineering team in review and retrospective after those 2 weeks to make sure everything's built and working as expected. Once your product has reached the level of maturity you want for shipping, you then enable internal resources. And again, could be support, sales, pre-sales, post-sales, professional services. It's working with legal, it's working with pricing, packaging, it's working with maybe any internal stakeholder teams that were dependent on you building this to make sure they're aware. And then it's going and doing that externally, doing demos, webinars, conferences, speaking engagements, writing technical blogs, and really getting your product out the door so that when customers are starting to use it at scale, you're there, you maybe are visiting them on site, you're advising on best practices, and you're continually refining the roadmap because guess what? This process is iterative and you're going to keep going through this cycle over and over to deliver value to customers. And so I would say the product management role is a relatively higher stress role. Again, a lot of meetings, a lot of dependencies, a lot of stakeholder management, and a lot of need to keep calm. And so with that mindset, one piece of advice I'm going to give you all, if there's some aspiring product managers out there listening, one of the most important pieces of advice I could give you is, saying no. I think a product manager has a million things they can do, and prioritizing your own time and saying no to, sales requests, customer requests, scope increase requests, not only to protect your own team's time, but to protect your own time is extremely incredible. And that also goes for saying no to customers, right? This is extremely important. When a customer comes to you, they may be really after this specific use case to solve a problem that they have, and it's a valid use case, but they might be the only ones with that problem. And you got to keep in mind, as a product manager, you're surveying the larger need of the market. You're focusing on that 80%. And so you want to protect your product from becoming a Frankenstein. You don't want to say yes to every customer, every request, and it's doing random things that don't have any synergy, right? You're developing this cohesive vision, and that's where you listen to multiple customers to see where the common threads are, right? It's not easy. It's definitely not easy to tell a customer no. But at the end of the day, you're working to serve them, to serve, problems that a majority of customers have, and getting the best state, the best return on the investment of your engineering resources back to the organization. And so another piece of advice then, what to do longer term, that was my short-term piece of advice. Longer term, and I started out saying this, I do think health, both especially mental health and physical health, is extremely important in succeeding as a product leader, as a product manager, right? Staying healthy means staying productive. This is a high stress role. You're doing a lot of decisions. You're doing a lot of stakeholder management. You're in high pressure situations. And so having a good mental health really is key. And that starts with getting the sleep you need, getting the physical activity and you need, healthy eating and a work-life balance. And as I mentioned, if you need to say no to management to make sure you get those things, you need to do that. But ultimately, Coach Manjeet here, he's a product management director. He will live and breathe by this philosophy, and so will I, right? Which is you serve the society by creating the best product, and you serve your coworkers by being the most responsive, the best when you are in your best state. And so really look after yourselves. It's great role, but it does require its own level set of maintenance. And that advice goes for any role you may have, is to look after yourself. And so with that, if you want to screenshot this or pause the video, I won't talk into every single one of these items, but I did try to list out all the activities that I see you do in product management. You could look at it, get an idea what you think is useful, or not useful, but just to give you an idea if you want to get into product management, what are some of the things you might be doing? And so that's just a list for you. Again, you could pause the video and take a look, read it, but it covers a lot of what we discussed in our 10 steps today. And so with that, really thank you. You made it to the end of the video. There's a lot of content. Hopefully we all saw that, product is definitely a lot of collaboration in this role. It's a lot of leadership and vision setting, right? As I mentioned, sailing the ship in the right direction and making sure that you see a positive net benefit to society as a result of your product. And so with all that, I definitely encourage everyone, if you like this advice and if you just want even more general workplace advice, just beyond even this product management role, then I highly encourage you to check out my book. The link is in the description. I've taken everything I've learned, the last about 10 years in industry here, and I've put them in this book as a high performer, high achiever. It's advice that I wish I knew day one. It's advice I learned the hard way. And honestly, it's advice that is applicable no matter the role you get into, the industry you get into, and even if you're not a new grad, it's still beneficial. And also, if you want to connect on LinkedIn, I'm always looking to increase my network. Love to provide, let everyone connect with me and get that more social collaboration going. And so both links for that will be in the description of this video below. And I really look forward to another video soon. I do expect another one in terms of the skills and breaking into product management, which I know is going to be another follow-up question a lot of you have. And so add any other questions and comments, and thank you all for your time.